My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with William Barlow Quarton III, an early pioneer in radio and television broadcasting in the Cedar Rapids and the eastern Iowa area. Bill, tell us what year and where you were born.
I was born in Algona, Iowa, March 27th, 1903.
What was your dad's name?
William B. Quarton II.
Okay. And your mother's name?
Ella Reeser Quarton.
Mm-hmm. And what ethnic background is that? Is that English, perhaps?
Both were English. My grandfather came over here with his great-grandfather, Thomas, in 1809,
Mm-hmm.
and settled over in a place in lower Illinois, and later in 1867, they moved to Oskaloosa, near Oskaloosa, Iowa.
Yeah. Did you have any brothers and sisters, Bill?
Yes, I had two brothers and two sisters. I was the youngest of five. And
quite a bit younger than the rest of them, or?
Yes, we were all strung out. My brother, the oldest, was 15 years older than I. The next one, Sumner, who later was my boss, and one of the reasons that I came to Cedar Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
Sumner was 2 years younger, and then there were two sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And
what
then
were their names?
Helen was the older, and Florence.
Mm-hmm.
She had very light hair, and they called her Cotton. And I came along 5 years later.
And what was your other brothers' names besides Sumner?
The older brother's name was Harold. He was an official in the Foreign Service.
Mm-hmm. What was your dad's occupation?
Well, when I was born in 1903, he was on the bench. He was a district judge.
Would he have been called a circuit judge, or did he just?
No, there were three. Let's see. No, there were 5 counties that he serviced. He could reach all of them on the railroad, except let's see, Pocahontas. And he had to ride the horse down to Pocahontas.
And I imagine he had a horse and buggy, too.
Yes, one of the two.
Yeah. When you were young, Bill, of course, there was no electricity in your home.
No.
Oil lamps?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Remember what you burned in them?
Yeah.
Kerosene? Or?
Well, they finally got electricity before we moved. But my father built a very nice house when I was 3 years old. And I remember it so well because in the old house, we would have to go to the outside bathroom in the cold winter. And I remember my mother bathing me in a tub, tin tub in the kitchen.
By the cook stove.
Yeah. But that new house was something. It had a bathroom up on the 3rd floor and even a toilet on the 1st floor. So I thought it was such a wonderful house, and it was a nice house.
And you were talking about that it had a ice box.
Oh, yes, my mother, one of the things she liked the best was that there was an outside door, and the Iceman would come up some stairs and open that door and put it right in from the outside, and she didn't have to follow the ice span across the floor after he left.
Yes. Did you? What was your job as a young boy? Did you have to haul wood?
In the house?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I did, there were 33 floors, and most people had houses in those days that used roof water, and I would pump that water up to the third floor into a big tank that was used in the house.
Bill, would you say you had a fun childhood?
A wonderful childhood. Is a town of about 3,000 then, and I don't think it's over 6,000 now. Free, barefooted childhood. That
fishing in the creek in the summertime.
Oh yes, there was the east branch of the Des Moines River was just a skip and a throw from the backyard.
Did you have a swimming hole in the?
Oh sure, and there was a little real kind of a. Well, it wasn't a very big hill, but we used it in the wintertime.
It was big to a little kid.
Yeah.
Did you ever borrow any watermelons from any neighbors?
Yes, and we got caught one time too. I remember that because on one other occasion, the farmer came out and heard us rustle, and he came out to the front door with a shotgun in his hand, and we had to duck down in a creek bed that was filled with mosquitoes, and we just couldn't do a thing about it. We had to wait it out until that farmer got back in the house.
What did your dad think about this, was being he was a judge?
Well, by that time...
or didn't he ever find it out?
No, he didn't find it out, but my brother, who was county attorney at the time, and the sheriff knew about it, and I think he was a little surprised when the sheriff brought us in to account for all of this business. We weren't doing it the way it ought to be done, and we'd kind of tear up the vines and do things that we shouldn't have done.
Yeah. Bill, you were talking about your dad having a horse and buggy. So
Yeah.
did he have a barn on your place?
Oh yes, yes, the barn, and we kept a cow, and we milked the cow there. Actually, he had been born on a farm, and loved Guernsey cows, and that was his pet. So
That was his hobby.
yes, he had a farm. A farm about 3 miles from town, and specialized in Guernsey cows. And I was very happy about that when I went to.
We'll get to that later, Bill. Did your mother raise chickens for eggs and do?
Yeah, we had chickens.
How about in the wintertime? Did they harvest ice in the East Branch of the Des Moines River?
Well, of course, yes. We had a company that used the river for ice, and I remember the big old barn they had filled with sawdust.
The ice house.
And great big chunks of ice.
Christmas, Bill. Do you have any Christmas memories of long ago when you was a child? Was there any presents? Could your dad afford to give you presents? Or
Well, we always got an orange in our stocking, and usually one real nice thing. I remember my father was a great admirer of Teddy Roosevelt, and when the teddy bears became popular, I had one, and I loved that thing when I was a little fella, and I practically wore all the hair off of it before.
do you still have it?
No, no, no. It's as long as
Do you remember any traditional meals that you had at Christmas, the family had at Christmas time, Bill? Like, did you have oyster soup perhaps on Christmas Eve?
we had, an oyster thing. That was special. We didn't get many oysters in that part of the country.
Would there be somebody coming through the country to sell fish and oysters in the fall of the year?
Oh, I don't remember, but there must have been.
How about on Sundays? Did your mother fix a big Sunday dinner every Sunday?
Yes, we, and this was in those early days. It was quite a family, with 5 children.
Was your dad strict, being that he was in a position as a judge, or was he a fun type person with the boys and girls?
No, he was fairly strict.
And he expected the family or the children to be kind of on the straight and narrow and not to steal watermelons.
I'm afraid so.
When you were in high school, Bill, were you into sports?
No, I really didn't grow up until I was a junior in high school. For some reason or other, I remember one day looking around at some of my playmates that were so much bigger than I, and all of a sudden I started growing. And it was much later in life, yeah.
When you were a senior in high school, did you have any idea what you wanted to do with your life, or where you may go after high school?
I thought I'd like to have a hotel and a nice dining room in the hotel, and now that's about the last thing that I'd want to do.
Did you have the opportunity to go to college?
Oh yes, all of our family went, but by the time I got there, things were pretty tough for the farm community, and I fortunately had acquired through my father a very nice Guernsey heifer who had a very famous mother. And we got all of $600 for her, and that got me through the first year of college at the University of Iowa.
And when you were at the University of Iowa, was football as popular as it is today?
We were the Big Ten champions in 1921 and 22. Yes, it was very important.
You remember any football greats from that era?
Oh yeah, Aubrey Devine was an All-American, and Craven Shuttleworth was the fellow that paved the way for him. I remember.
So, did you go on in high school, at the Iowa, or did you quit after 1 year?
Well, I had to quit. I had to start making my own way, and I took a.
Little did you realize that in spending your first year at University of Iowa that 67 years later you'd be serving on the Board of Regents for 2 different terms.
I had no idea. No, indeed.
So what did you do then after the first year? You took a job in Washington, D.C., didn't you?
We, back in Algona, we had neighbor who became a congressman, Dickinson. He later became a senator, and he did a lot for me. But in the beginning, I took an examination and I got a job in the attorney's office of the Treasury Department. And I got the tremendous sum of $1,000 a year at that time. And that was guaranteed for the first year. And if I got a good job, then I got a promotion.
Did you ever consider possibly going to night school?
Oh, I always did, yes. Right away, I enrolled in George Washington University. And because I was going to night school from 5 to 7, it took 4 more years for me before I finished.
Was this Congressman Dickinson, Bill, was he kind of more or less your mentor when you were in Washington?
Indeed, he was. He was wonderful to me, and even he would let me go with him sometimes when he was going to a meeting, and I could sit in the back and listen to him. As a matter of fact, I was at a meeting one time when the farmers, the wheat farmers and the cotton farmers and all the farmers decided to try to get subsidies from the government. And later they did get that, and it lasted until about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. After your stint in Washington, then where did you decide to go?
Well, I needed a job, and New York was handy.
I think you told me this was 1926 when you...
Yeah, New York was handy, and I thought there must be a job there someplace for a smart young man.
Was New York known as the Big Apple back then? Did you ever hear that?
Oh,
term,
yes,
Big Apple?
yes, yeah.
And what did you find anything to your liking in New York?
Well, yes, I got an offer from Standard Oil in New Jersey to take a job down in the Argentine. But my mother objected to that. My older brother Harold had been in the Foreign Service, and in that kind of a job, you don't see much about them until they have vacations back about every 2 years or so. She objected, and so I looked further and got a job with Thomas Edison. In those days, he was along in years. As a matter of fact, I think he only lived about 3 or 4 years more. But he was a wonderful fellow, very unusual in a number of respects.
What was his particular project he was working on at the time you worked for him?
Well, we were... the one thing that he did, you know, he invented a lot of things, but the one thing that he did that no one else had anything to do with it was recording the human voice for the first time. And even back in those days, we were working selling what he called the Ediphone. It was a machine that was used in the office.
Would that have been a forerunner to the dictaphone?
Oh yeah, that's what it was. He didn't. He had people like Crusoe and Gallicurci over, and they experimented with this thing, but I find it kind of interesting that he didn't really see the use of that in the music field. Of course, later on, that was the main thing.
So what was after Thomas Edison then, what was your next venture, Bill?
Well, I was living in a big apartment house of a fraternity of mine, and there were two other ladies in the apartment. The rest of them were older people. And this apartment house had a wonderful roof garden. And we'd take our dates up there and look over Brooklyn, and every time we'd go up there, we'd notice that there was another clothesline across the roof of Brooklyn, and a line coming down from the middle of it, of course, to a radio. And it just seemed like it was going to be a tremendous new something or other.
Exciting new field.
Yeah.
Was coming on the scene.
Yeah. So
these were actually radio antennas people had strung up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it looked like clotheslines.
Would there have been radios, or would they probably been using crystals?
Well, they came down to radio at that time. The crystals were before that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. We thought it was going to be, and I tried to get a job, and every other young person in New York seemed to be having the same idea. And all of a sudden, I discovered that my brother, Sumner, had taken a job in, of all things, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was married to a Coles girl, and her brother, Gardner Jr., they called him Mike, had decided to not pursue the newspaper business because his older brother did that and went to Minneapolis. But he was buying up the radio stations around Iowa, and this pile of junk over here was one of them. And by that time, the call letters were KWCR, but before that, it was, I think, WHAA. But KWCR, keep watching Cedar Rapids.
I understood that WKAA went on the air in 1922.
Yes.
And this Gardner you was talking about, was this Gardner Coles?
Gardner Coles.
Okay, I didn't.
Junior,
okay.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And then, did you actually move to Cedar Rapids then? And
Oh yes, I saw an opportunity there, and I kept talking to him and writing to him, and finally he said, I was trying to tell him how to run the station, and finally he sent me a telegram that says, if you think you can sell, come on out. And that was in November of 1921.
mm-hmm.
And I was working for Procter & Gamble at that time around New York on Manhattan Island. And
what was your duties as Procter & Gamble then?
Well, Crisco was one of the things that
Hot items.
Hot items at that time was new, and it was a wonderful product, and everything was going well. But I was interested in radio because I could see a future there.
The date, Bill, when you said you come to Cedar Rapids, earlier you said 1921.
No, it was 1931. I
1931.
misspoke.
Yeah, we wanted to make that correction. And when you come to Cedar Rapids, and your brother was working for
KWCR at that
KWCR,
time.
what did they have for programs? Much of anything, or
Anything they could. We could pick up the dance bands in New York, but there weren't, the networks weren't established yet. And we would have some of the craziest things, anything that...
a lot of local talent?
Oh, yeah, anything we could get. And a little later, as we developed it, we had all kinds of artists. And I remember we had 5 bands that played Monday through Friday, the Bohemian Band on Saturdays and Sundays, and the talent was pretty scarce, but we did the best we could with it.
Where were the studios at, Bill? Montrose Hotel?
Montrose Hotel, yes. We were there until about 1935, I think.
Mm-hmm. So how did WMT come about? Can you tell us?
Well, yes. Mr. Parham was, Douglas Parham. I think he had a wife that came from Cedar Rapids, but he was associated with Lee DeForest during World War I and was quite famous in the radio field. And he started WJAM, and his friend, a fellow by the name of Harry Parr, was very interested too and helped him, and they were friends. So Parham says, let's build one for you too. So they did. They both had a station, and it worked out very well. But later, Parham decided to move to California and sold his station to Harry Parr. Harry Shaw, who was owner of the Waterloo paper.
Tribune.
And then, of course, when that was done, it was a natural thing to rechange the call letters to WMT, which Waterloo Morning Tribune.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the way it went. Mm-hmm. And Harry was quite active down in Des Moines, or down in Washington. And he was down there one time, and he was telling his attorney and the engineer about his turning to 600 kilocycles, and he was getting all over the Midwest. And the engineer says, you were what? And he says, I was switched it over there, and he says, you can't do that. Well, he says, I'm going to. It's amazing how much coverage I can get out of that. And he said, well, you tell him over to, but it was before the FTC had started, and it was being handled by the Commerce Department under Hoover. He told him to go over and tell him he was going to stay on 600. Well, he got by with it. They finally got tired of hearing this fella, and we got 600.
That was 600 kilocycles. That was probably the choice frequency in the radio range.
Well, it was a lot of coverage down there.
And then in 1934, Bill, you was telling me that Coles purchased WMT.
Yeah, Harry Power, Harry Shaw rather, decided to sell it, and we were looking for a better frequency. So it was purchased in 1934 and moved back to Cedar Rapids the following spring. We built those towers out north of Marion there.
Mm-hmm. With 600 kilocycles, you could get multi-state coverage, couldn't you?
Yes.
Especially in the daytime. And it was, I can remember listening to WMT when I was a little boy. My dad used to listen to it. That's the only station we ever listened to. And so I know it was very popular in the farming communities.
Yes, we had some pretty tough competition in Des Moines with WHO. It was a 50,000 water, and we couldn't get much farm business. So the Coles organization, of which we were one, bought WNAX in Yankton. And the three stations, the one they had in Des Moines, WMT and WNAX, could compete with WHO, the 50,000 water, very handily. And we did. We got a lot of farm business.
And any girlfriends yet in your life?
No.
Who did you?
I wasn't making enough money to, but later on, about 1935, we had a singer at the station. Her name was Elnora Bierkamp, and she had been on the Paramount circuit and had been had a job with later with a Japanese company and she traveled the Japanese Empire for 2 years before she came back to Cedar Rapids. And
was that the Chautauqua?
She and her sister made their money in Chautauqua in the summer. That's how they got through college. And then this led to this job with the Japanese company, and she did spent 2 whole years over there. Then came back here, and things were terrible from the standpoint of having a job. So she did a little work for us, and I got acquainted with her and married her. Yes, my soon-to-be bride ran a little, what we called a little flower shop in a very convenient location downtown. And I had heard about a Man on the Street program, and we saw an opportunity there to advertise the little flower shop and at the same time have something that we could sell on the radio. And we got it started, and I had a friend, the salesman, like me at that particular time, and I had a deal with him that he could run the flower shop on the air if if he wouldn't sell a program that required moving the program from my friend's flower shop. Well, it just works out fine.
Who was doing the Man on the Street at that time, Bill?
His name was Art Shepard. And oddly enough, yeah, on bad days we needed some chills that could fill in for us. And there was a chap, the assistant manager of the dime store, not very far away, and he happened to be handy, and we kind of had a deal with him. His name was Mike McElroy, and we would on bad days we'd get Mike down there, and he did such a good job. We later sent him up to Waterloo, and he became a competitor after World War I, much later.
Bill, you had mentioned that you got married to Eleanor in 1935.
Yes.
That was the same year you were promoted, weren't you, within the company that...
Well, I was sales manager.
You was a sales manager. You started out as just, advertising, sales? And then, In 1935, you become the general sales manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same year that Mr. Cole was put up to 3 antennas North American, too.
Yeah.
Were you blessed, you and your wife, blessed with any children? Bill?
No. We adopted a little girl in 1940. And
what was her name?
Diane. We called her Diane.
She
now lives in Des Moines. She's
I'll ask you later what she's doing with her life. That was in 1941 when you adopted.
40.
1940.
Uh-huh.
Didn't you get a new owner, WMT, a new owner about this same time period? Helen Mark.
Yes, Mike Coles was very ambitious, and he wanted a station in Washington, D.C. And he worked out a trade with the station company there called American Broadcasting Company. And they took the station here, and he got a station in Washington. Yes. And we became an American Broadcasting Company in the state of Delaware, where so many of the corporations find it convenient to register.
Mm-hmm. Well, then wasn't it about in this time period where your brother Sumner moved on and you become the station manager?
That was in 1943. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did you have a feeling maybe your life was starting to come together, all the different jobs you had when you were younger?
Well, not. I didn't really. I was happy here. And didn't think much about the future. If I were to do it again, I would be more serious. I didn't really get serious until about when I was 48. You
were a late bloomer.
As far as my own future was concerned, yes.
The war years, did this help or hinder the radio business?
Well, I think the war made radio news. It became very important from the Edinburgh days in London from 1938 on through the war. It really made radios very important.
It probably reached its popularity or its heyday probably right in that period too, the war
Yeah.
years, 43, 45.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 1953, television come on the scene as far as local.
Yes. Yes, actually, it started in 1948, a little earlier than that. The big cities got the stations, and it looked like it was off to a big start, but the Federal Radio Commission had decided that they'd made a terrible mistake in allocations, so they stopped everything. And we had a waiting period there of 5 years. They kept trying different allocations, and finally decided on one in 1953. And there was a terrific big grab for them. We got Channel 2 here, and were able to get on the air first in this area.
Was Channel 2 was kind of like 600 kilocycles. That was a very good frequency to have.
Well, it was a low frequency. It was good in one way and not good in another. But CBS had Channel 2 in New York, and we figured that was about as good as we could do out here. You didn't have your choice. You just had to pick from what was available. The frequencies didn't exist where they should have, as far as the population was concerned.
Who was your advertising manager in early television?
Well, I was. But after the war, these fellows all came back, and I went on to be manager, and after 1943, and when the men got back from the war, during the war, we had a fellow named Sullivan, Don Sullivan, who later handled a station, was general manager of a station out in Sioux City, and he had flat feet and an arm. We didn't get him, but when he came back, we got him a job out there, and Lou Van Ostrin, who got to be my associate. He always called me my associate. I became manager and made him sales manager. Yeah, he was a good one. I spent a great deal of time with Lou and always enjoyed his friendship.
So when did you first go on the air with television, Channel 2?
In October 1953.
And the first program that was broadcast was...
Oh, yeah, I had a friend that, as a matter of fact, a roommate in college who had moved up in NBC, and NBC was the power at that time, and they had the World Series, and I asked him if he could get me the World Series to start the station, And he said he thought he could. And so we arranged that. I was to pay, I think we were to pay him $25,000 for the World Series or something, which we never paid him. But I think he forgot about it. But we did plan on starting, and I had arranged my little speech, and everything was ready, and the engineer tried to find the World Series, and it wasn't there. And we didn't know what to do, and we just sat there. And by golly, it did come up on the hour, so we did get off to a great start and used NBC. That was an experience.
Now, this was from your new studio in Broadcast Park?
Yes.
On Oakland Road, right?
Yeah, I was in such a hurry to get on the air first that we built that studio in a kind of a hurry, and I was sorry we did that, but it served a purpose, and we were first on the air.
Why, in thinking back, how would you have done it different, Bill? You said you weren't satisfied.
Oh, well, we threw a lot of plaster together, and we could have been using other materials.
It held up quite well all these years.
Yeah.
Bill, you eventually became the executive vice president, didn't you, of the American Broadcasting Stations, Inc.?
Yes.
What time period was that?
Yes, and Mrs. Mark and my immediate boss, Bill Off, had a parting of the ways, and I became the head of the operating part of American Broadcasting Stations. Yes.
And then in 2 years later, in 1959, you was appointed president of the...
Yeah, yeah.
1956, the WMT was awarded the prestigious Peabody Award. Do you remember what this award, why this award was given to WMT in relationship to what?
No, I don't.
You have received so many awards and presentations that I don't expect you to remember them all.
Well, after the war, the Allies took some of these experts that the Germans had into their countries, and one that came over here had invented the part of the airplane. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't tell you.
It's okay.
Lippisch?
Yeah.
Alexander.
Lippy. She lived down at the end of the
Alex. He was an aeronautical engineer, designer.
Alex Lippis.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug Grant, who was our program director, worked with him a long time, and they were the ones that got the Peabody Award. Mm-hmm. And I just went along because I wanted to be there to see this, but it was Doug Grant, our program director, and this German, Lippisch, who moved over here. I think his daughter still lives in Des Moines.
Yeah. His son lives here off of Mount Vernon Road.
Oh, does he?
We interviewed him.
Oh, good. Well, you can put it back together better than I did. I can.
What year did you officially retire, Bill, from WMT? or American Broadcasting Inc.?
Oh, I think about 1967 or 68.
Mm-hmm. Thinking back, Bill, you were an entrepreneur before the term was ever popular with all the things that you got into and were involved in and on the cutting edge of radio and television. And
Well,
you think about that?
Yeah, if I were to live over again, I was so happy with what I was doing that I wasn't paying attention to much else, and an opportunity came along to give me some experience in the national field, and I was able to take it. The Iowa broadcasters had, from time to time, problems with the legislature, but one time they decided they were going to make this Iowa Broadcasting Company, or association rather, a permanent thing, and I was appointed, or elected, I forget, the first president. And
to the Board of Regents?
no, to Iowa Broadcasting Association in Iowa. The national organization had a system whereby our member was taken from either Iowa, Nebraska, or Missouri. And the chap that was on the board representing us was a fellow from Omaha, Johnny Gillen. And John, because of health reasons, had to retire. And I asked him if he would support me to take on that job, and he said he would. And I figured that if I had been president of the Iowa Broadcasters, and if he could take care of me in Nebraska, I'd win. And I did. So I got to be a member of the first of the radio broadcasters, the national organization.
You served 2 different terms on that.
Well, then later, I had learned in Washington that if you want to get in politics, you have to serve some time in the trenches, and you have to make friends, and so we did that. And when TV came along, I got on the board right off the bat, and later I was elected as the president.
Mm-hmm. All the awards, Bill, that you had been awarded over the years and your company had been awarded, what would you say was the most meaningful one to you?
Well, I suppose being chairman of the board of the National Association of Broadcasters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In 1972, you and your friend Lou Van Ostrom decided to go off on...
Yeah, we had a couple of cities where we had the cable.
Did you get tired of retirement? Come out
Well,
of retirement?
No. I guess we want to be a little more active, but really we saw such a great opportunity there with the former experience that we had. I remember one of them was in Fairfield, Iowa. We owned the old company owned half of the cable system, and up in northern Minnesota, there were several cities that Grand Rapids was one of them, and they couldn't even pick up Minneapolis like they should have. And of course, later on, this became a very easy thing to do. Things changed very rapidly, and we were retired, but we saw a tremendous future there. So we got right back into it again, and ended up. I think we had something like 18 franchises in Iowa. The broadcasters would come to us and say, how do we get into cable? And we'd say, well, you get the franchise and we'll put you in cable. And all we wanted was 51% or a little bit, and we'd do the rest. And it worked out very well.
In 1993, 10 years ago, Bill, you were awarded the first Herbert Hoover Humanitarian Award.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bill Quarton gave an awful lot back to mankind and to Cedar Rapids and worthy causes, didn't you?
Well, we tried to.
You were very generous to the Cedar Rapids area. What year did your wife, Eleanor, pass away? You remember?
Yes, January 1984. Mm-hmm.
And what's your daughter doing today, and where is she living?
Well, she lives in Des Moines. Her husband has a business there, supplying equipment to banks and other organizations that some of these big companies don't have their own agencies, and he's gathered up several of those that need representation in the area, and has done very well with it.
Has she ever told her dad how proud she is of him?
Well, I hope so.
This is a picture of your wife, Eleanor, Bill,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And your daughter, Diane, and a picture of you. You are a handsome-looking gentleman. Did you get a picture of his family? How many grandchildren, Bill?
Grandchildren,
Yes,
too.
Two grandchildren?
Yeah.
Very nice. Bill, before I draw this to a close, I wanted to, you were very instrumental in setting up the public television network in Iowa. Could you tell us a little bit about that, how?
Well, when I saw people in my employ that were about to retire, I'd usually try to talk to them about doing something in a civic or nature to keep busy. Well, I said, hey, how about you? And I got busy and was appointed to the Board of Regents. Well, in that particular time, Iowa was just about ready to set up what was Iowa Public Television. And the system was that 3 of the members of the 6-member board were to be from the Board of Regents, and I was one of them. I found it very interesting because I was the only broadcaster of the 9 people on it, and I really thought, you usually get a job on a board of 6 or 9 or 15 people. You really don't amount to too much, and I was the only one that knew anything about broadcasting. And I did think that this was really worthwhile.
Yeah. And it was.
Still is.
What?
Bill, this is the many plaques and awards and pictures that was taken throughout your lifetime. The Alan is panning with the camera.
That was an interesting. When
NAB.
The plaque he's on now, the National Broadcasting Association. You had mentioned that as one of your favorite.
the National Broadcasting, we were having a meeting one day, and one of the members of the National Association said, "You know, the Kennedy's always having those newspaper people. Why didn't he have us over?" Well, boy, it was about a week later why we got a big invitation, and 18 of us went over and had lunch with him.
To the White House.
Yeah, and
That was quite prestigious in itself right there.
he asked us what we wanted, and we had it arranged so we didn't all talk at once. We had a spokesman, and when he finished, he was saying, "Mr. President, do you have something you want to tell us?" And he said, "Yeah." And he starts in on Harvard economics, that it isn't all bad to have 2 or 3% inflation every year. And it gives them people something to look forward to. And then he starts talking about the Panama Canal. And we all looked at the other and we said, "What about the Panama Canal?" Well, we found out, and about 2 or 3 years later, we were giving the canal back to the Panamanians.
This plaque is the Iowa Public Broadcasting Service, Bill.
Ed Murrow's famous up there.
Right, just to the left of it. No, that's Lowell Thomas.
No, way up.
Okay.
There are 3 of us in that.
I'm showing Lou Van Ostrom now.
This is the gentleman that you and him went off and started the cable company, Lou Van Ostrom.
Yeah. Yeah, Lou and I were.
The photo there with Walter Cronkite, what was the occasion there? The 35th anniversary of WMT?
Yeah, he had, after the war, UP moved him over to Moscow, and he came home, I think it was 1948, and something like that. And is he recording something?
This picture of Mr. Reagan, was that when he was called Dutch Reagan?
Yeah, he.
Was this your office that he was?
Was this your office that Dutch was visiting you, Bill?
Yeah, he was traveling around the country. They said that, he went to Hollywood, and then WHO replaced him with my guy over here, Bill Brown. And he got into politics out there in the union and be head of the union, and then was a governor, and later traveled around the country. That was when he was working for GE. It was different than the situation that exists today with this chap that wants to be the governor of California. Reagan really had a lot of experience.
Bill, unless you have any more memories to share with us, the Cedar Rapids History Center, the Linn County Historical Society would like to thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
Well, thank you for
Thank you, Mr. Quarton.